Welcome, my friends, to our series on Mercury in the 12 houses of the horoscope. I'm just so glad that you've joined me for this series. This information is coming to you from my Royal Stars Academy course in astrology, and you can learn astrology there with me at any time you like, or if you prefer, you can do one of my short courses at the Learn Astrology page of my website. And now, without any further ado, let's look straight at Mercury. We know that Mercury is the planet considered to be closest to the sun. But did you know that in the 1800s, it was believed that there was another planet, Vulcan, that existed between Mercury and the sun? However, it was considered too close to the sun to be observable in the sun's glare. In fact, in esoteric astrology, the hypothetical Vulcan is still included in astrological analysis, and it's an absolutely fascinating point in the sky. So my point being here is that there are some people who consider that Mercury is not the closest planet to the sun. But in this series, we'll be looking at current astronomical concepts. And that means Mercury is the messenger of the gods, considered to be the closest to the sun, our main luminary in the sky. Let's look at the astronomy of Mercury. Mercury is the smallest planet in the solar system. As we've just established, it's also the closest planet to the sun. But even though it is near to the sun, it is not the hottest planet. Would you believe that because Mercury has no atmosphere at all, it has the most variable temperatures of any planet because it cannot retain any heat from the sun? You know, nighttime temperatures on Mercury can get as cold as minus 173 degrees Celsius, or that's minus 280 degrees Fahrenheit. While in the daytime, Mercury is hotter than your oven. It gets to a stinking 427 degrees Celsius. That's 800 degrees Fahrenheit. Amazing. What a variance. Now, Mercury also takes 87 Earth days to orbit the sun. Earth only takes 365. So it's a very fast little planet. It spins around the sun really, really quickly. Mercury is made of rocks covered in crater holes, just like the moon is. And this tells us that it's been hit many times in the past by comets and meteors. They slammed into little Mercury very hard, as once again, Mercury has no atmosphere to buffer them or slow the comets down. So the impact was very visible, or is very visible, on Mercury's surface. Billions of years ago, Mercury was also volcanically active, and this has also made its splotchy surface full of volcanoes and vents and craters as well. Let's look at the mythology of Mercury. You know, people have known that Mercury as a body in the sky has existed since as long ago as 1400 years BC. You know, in ancient Babylon, they called Mercury Nabu. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, Nabu. And Nabu was the god in charge of writing, thinking, and wisdom. He would write down on a tablet the fated destiny of each person. Nabu wore a cap with horns and rode on a winged dragon named Sirush. Now, it was the Romans who worshipped the god that was named Mercury, and he was the god connected to business and making money, communicating and giving messages. He was also associated with traveling and was a guide for souls going to the underworld. There's a lot of mythology about Mercury knowing what's going on in the underworld because he was the god that traversed the pathway to the underworld. He had a special temple built for him in 495 BC and a celebration on the 15th of May called Mercurialia. In ancient Greece, Mercury was known as Hermes, the youngest of all the Greek gods. Hermes liked to trick people. He was a bit of a prankster and a fun lover, a lot like Loki in the Norse mythology. He also wore winged shoes and a winged hat. He had a rooster for a pet and was referred to as the messenger of the gods. The Egyptians also worshipped a god who was named Thoth, and just like Mercury and Hermes, he was the god of wisdom and writing and science and magic and art. He was also the god of judgment and the dead. Thoth had the body of a human with the head of an ibis bird. He was the secretary and counselor to the Egyptian sun god Ra, a record keeper this time, not just a messenger of the gods. Now, what about the astrology of Mercury? In astrology, Mercury tells us about how we learn, what we tend to think about, how we will tend to speak and communicate. Mercury also represents business and trade, brothers and sisters, and is also the planet of being young and playful. Where Mercury sits in our astrology chart, the map of the sky at the moment we were born, will tell us so much about how we're going to be playful, how we will think, how we will speak, and how we're going to learn best in life. Now, your Mercury might say that you will learn best through being around other people. Or maybe your Mercury position might say that you will learn best through being very quiet and reading a lot. Or maybe by experimenting and doing things that are very out of the ordinary. There are so many ways we can learn, and Mercury shows us how we can best do that. In astrology, Mercury is also a very talented planet. It tells us about our skills and our abilities. If Mercury is in Virgo, for example, it might tell us that we might find that we're very good at cooking. If Mercury is in the sign of Cancer, we might have an amazing imagination and create fascinating stories. Perhaps our Mercury is in the sign of Gemini, and that might make us a very funny person indeed. Wherever Mercury sits can also show us what our brothers and our sisters might be like. For example, if Mercury is in the zodiac sign of Aries, our siblings might be very competitive and like to play games. Or in the sign of Aquarius, our brothers and sisters might be very quirky and unusual and super smart. Mercury is a planet that is in charge of two star signs known as Gemini and Virgo. These two signs are all about being very clever and practical with your hands or practical with your mind or both. Mercury in astrology is also the playful jester, a jokester. He is clever and bright. He is a young person, a youthful energy, and all of us have a little bit of Mercury in our heart somewhere. Everyone is different in the way they learn, think, talk, and play. And Mercury teaches us to love the different ways people think and communicate, and to love our own unique way of thinking and talking and communicating as well. In what ways are you talented? How do you learn best? What things do you think about the most? This is all reflective of your Mercury placement. Your Mercury placement gives the reason for the answers you just gave to those questions I asked you, and so much more. And now, without any further ado, we're going to look at what Mercury brings to us or gives to our lives through his placement in each of the houses of the horoscope. So join with me now. We're going to dive into a little piece from the Royal Stars Academy that describes Mercury in all the different houses.
Mercury in the 3rd house. Well, that's going to make you very witty, very funny, and it's great for entertainers and comedians. You might have a lot of dexterity with your hands as well. Mercury rules hands in the house to do with the hands, especially if Mercury has good aspects. Oh my goodness, you will be so skillful with your hands. So the dexterity might relate to the nature of the sign that's in the 3rd house. For example, if you have Taurus in the 3rd house, you might be a wonderful hairdresser, because Taurus has to do, with that sort of thing, with the beauty industry, and you obviously need to use your hands if you're a hairdresser. You might be a good cook with Taurus here, or a makeup artist, again, the beauty industry. If you have Pisces in the 3rd house, then the dexterity of your hands might be used to make amazing costumes, costume designer, or be some sort of magician or illusionist with a clever sleight of hand. If Virgo is the sign here, for example, in the 3rd house, it might make you, again, a brilliant cook, because both Virgo and Taurus have to do with food in a way. Virgo is cooking, Taurus is food and what we do with food. So Virgo here might be a brilliant cook that you use your hands for, or a cleaner. Might be the world's best cleaner, and I'd love to meet you if you are, because you can come clean my house. Or you might be, using your hands for something that's very practical and very useful, with Virgo as the 3rd house sign. Mercury in the 3rd house will give sort of a double whammy of 3rd house skills. Great gifts of writing, again, liking to write about the topics that are in relation to the sign that Mercury sits in. But skills with writing, skills with speaking about the topics of the planets that Mercury might be sitting with in the 3rd house, or the topics represented again by the sign that it's sitting in. Terrific analytical skills, organizational skills, planning skills, and just general business skills. Like, you've got double whammy, thumbs up, talents and abilities in those areas. It's also a brilliant position for quick talkers, quick thinkers, people who are curious and full of information and facts. You'll learn very easily. You have also this youthful, malleable frame of mind as well, very open to learning new things and having a youthful orientation with how you think. You will have a fast mind, but in a sense, sometimes you might feel like you can't switch your head or your brain off. Too much thinking. It's just going round and round and round. That can be the case sometimes too. Now, this is the house of siblings, and your siblings might have a lot of mercurial references to their nature. They might be witty, they might be fast talkers, they might be curious, full of facts, youthful in how they approach their life with a sort of exuberant, youthful energy. So siblings will carry some sort of Mercury qualities about them. The 3rd house represents the message we have for the world, and your communication endeavors might be most successful with younger people if Mercury sits in the 3rd house. So gear your message that you're here to present to the world in whatever format to younger type people. If you're writing a book or a blog or creating a speech, it would benefit you to orient it to a younger, youthful demographic.